For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
You're watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and this is the Gist daily, that is Tuesday to Thursday, flagship show. Glad to welcome from Kabul, Bilal Sarwary. He's one of Afghanistan's best-known journalists across the world. Bilal is joining us from Kabul shortly, and we hope to get that line with him as soon as we can. Bilal, just checking whether you can hear me. Hi, Bilal. Just checking again, Bilal, is the network okay? Can you hear us from Delhi? We just get that sorted out with Bilal Sarwary, but till that time, it's evening to all our viewers. Mata, Varun, Pratap, Kshitij, Sarsad, Vishwanath.
Yes, I can hear you. It's be with you.
Great to hear you. Some technical issues that we can't avoid, Bilal. But first of all, congratulations. There's been a new entry to your family. Congratulations to you and your wife on the new member, Sola, which your daughter's name, which means peace as well, right?
I could only hear.
Right, we just get that sorted out. Ashok Dagwar also joins us. Good evening. Till I can get Bilal's line sorted, let's just play out a soundbite that we have when the Americans, that is in fact the US State Department spokesperson Ned Price, was asked about the Taliban offensives, especially in the north. We've seen in Badakhshan where the Taliban have even taken over a border crossing with the Tajikistan, and at least 2,000 to 1,500 Afghan national and defense security forces have reportedly gone into Tajikistan. This is what the US State Department spokesperson Ned Price had to say when he was asked about the Taliban offensive and how the US was responding, whether it would still talk to the Taliban.
Taliban continues with its military offenses in the north. Will the U.S. continue to diplomatically engage with them?
Well, right now we are supporting the intra-Afghan dialogue. And a couple things can be true at the same time. It is absolutely true that a political solution is the only way, again, to achieve that just and durable outcome that all parties want. And all parties seem to understand is the only end to 40 years of conflict. It's also true, again, that any government that comes to power at the barrel of a gun through force is not one that will have popular support. It is not one that will accrue assistance from the international community. It is not one that will have international legitimacy. And for all those reasons, it is almost certainly not one that will have durability. And what we seek, again, is a just and durable political outcome. And only through dialogue, in this case, intra-Afghan dialogue, can that be achieved.
Bilal, I guess there's a network lag, so I'll ask my question and then wait for you to answer. First of all, one of our viewers, Matara, also congratulating you on the happy news on the birth of Sola. Congratulations to you and your family. Bilal, just checking whether you can hear us. a slight issue there, viewers, with our network. We'll try and get that issue sorted out. But you heard Ned Price, the U.S. State Department spokesperson, there when he was asked about the U.S., in fact, whether how it would deal with the situation developing in Afghanistan with the Taliban rapidly taking over districts. Today, it's even attacked for the first time a provincial center, the capital of Badghis, which is in northeastern Afghanistan. Since May 1st, there are reports suggesting that the Taliban has taken over 100 districts in the 34 provinces in Afghanistan. Badakhshan was one of the main areas, province which borders Tajikistan, which the Taliban had rapidly moved into, and there were reports suggesting that the Afghan National Security Defense Forces had surrendered in large numbers, or had moved out of those areas, surrendered in terms of both land that they were defending. These pictures you're seeing from the Afghan Defense Ministry. Meanwhile, there have been other developments also that are taking place in and around Afghanistan. The Foreign Minister Jaishankar has reached Tehran. He's had a meeting with the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif. He's reportedly carrying a message from Prime Minister Modi for the President-elect Riasi as well. And just hours before the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar met with Javad Zarif in Tehran, the minister is, of course, on his way to Moscow for bilateral talks with his counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, which start tomorrow for 2 days. That is, again, going to be discussing, among various other bilateral issues between India and Russia, the Afghan issue. Just talking about Iran again, and Javad Zarif, just hours before he met External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, also had a meeting with the Taliban delegation from the Doha political office. That was led by Sheikh Mohammed Stanikzai, and they were also present other Afghan officials, including the former Speaker of Afghanistan, Yunus Qanuni, representatives who were from the Hamid Karzai camp, the Ghani-led government, that is, of course, Ghani is the current president, Hamid Karzai, and they were both delegations, that is the Taliban delegation led by Stanikzai, as well as the Afghan delegation led by various representatives of different politicians, including the government, who met Javad Zarif. And the Iranian state media is reporting that Iran has again offered to try and help both sides resume their negotiations, which have been stalled for months now. They started, the intra-Afghan negotiations started in September, on September 12th, in fact, 1 day after September 11, 2020 in Doha, but those have gone nowhere. Neither have the talks that were scheduled to take place in Istanbul. Those have not taken place because the Taliban is again not conducive to going to Istanbul with without the conditionalities that it in fact has laid out. We're trying to get in Bilal Sarwary again from Kabul, and these are pictures that he has available on his Twitter timeline, showing how the Taliban had taken various districts extremely speedily and rapidly in the north. Now, these are areas which are traditionally ethnic Tajik, especially Badakhshan in northeastern Afghanistan, borders Tajikistan. There was a border control point which the Taliban had also apparently taken over, with over 1,500 Afghan National Security Defense Forces who had crossed into Tajikistan. A couple of days back, both President Ghani and the Tajik President Imam Ali Rakhmanov also had a telephonic talk. These are pictures you're seeing of Afghan commandos that Bilal Sarwary had put up on his timeline, being deployed in Faizabad city. Faizabad was apparently surrounded by the Taliban. Faizabad, key city in the Badakhshan region. Just taking some comments from our viewers, Ashra Dargar, who says a mass surrender of Afghan security forces and arms and ammunition shows that they are not professional soldiers. We could ask Bilal more on that. They have been, of course, trained by various international players, including the US and India as well. A lot of money, over $4 billion, goes from the American kitty to just sustain the Afghan security forces as well. These pictures have been again put up by Bilal, who we still trying to contact in Kabul. Unfortunately, I have to apologize for network issue there. Pictures of the Taliban in Badakhshan area. This is the northeast, as we said, of Afghanistan, bordering Tajikistan. The first attack on the provincial capital took place earlier today in Badghis, which is the northeast. It's borders Turkmenistan, and while the Afghan central government says that the Afghan National Security Defense Forces are poised or are trying to retake many of these areas, those who are following it clearly say over about 100 districts in the 34 provinces of Afghanistan have fallen. 100, 200 districts possibly have fallen to Taliban hands from May 1st. That is just after President Biden announced his move to withdraw troops. US CENTCOM a couple of days back as well announced that it estimates that up to 90% of the US withdrawal is complete. And we saw what happened at the Bagram Air Force base just a couple of days ago when the Americans left. These are pictures, in fact, from Tolo News about reports suggesting that the Americans did not trust the Afghan National Security Forces to such an extent that the exact timing of the last withdrawal of American troops, of the last aircraft that was taking off, was not intimated, though both the White House, the State Department, and the Pentagon spokespersons did try to deflect questions when they were asked several times on that by saying that the Afghan hierarchy in terms of the Afghan central government and ministers had been taken into confidence in terms of leaving Bagram, which had been the central focus point, so as to speak, of the American invasion into Afghanistan post 2001, a sprawling many square kilometer airfield and mini township, in fact. This is John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesperson, when he was repeatedly asked about the Americans leaving and even turning off the electricity and water before they vacated the Bagram airfield.
You're saying that the reason that the U.S. didn't inform the Afghans and the Afghan government of the exact time that the U.S. was going to leave Bagram is because of the concern about the Taliban and the potential for Americans to I guess, come under attack as they were leaving?
What I would say is the exact hour of departure was not divulged for operational security purposes. Because we want to, again, when we talk about this drawdown, we talk about it being safe and orderly. Safe's the first word. And for operational security reasons. And that's not different, Court, than other turnovers we've done in the past in Afghanistan.
But you're saying you didn't divulge it to the Afghan military or the Afghan government when the U.S. was leaving the base. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the concern is that the Afghans would have potentially, the Afghans have been the U.S. partner.
I think in general, we felt it was just better to keep that information as close hold as possible.
So, I mean, you see the signal or that sends to the Afghans that the concern is that by notifying them when the U.S. is turning a base over to them, that it's going to get to the Taliban. Like, I mean, you can understand where the...
I can't speak for how the Afghans interpreted that decision, but it was a decision made in the best interest of the safety and security of our people.
Let's just take some comments, since we're not able to establish contact again with Bilal, from some of our viewers here. Kshitij says that Bagram marks 90% of a U.S. military withdrawal. This has been haphazard and certainly not in Afghan interest. The Americans say that the Afghans knew about it. They were told about it, at least the top leadership was. But reports suggesting that the commanders on the Afghan commanders on the Bagram Airbase were not specifically told on the last withdrawal and of the American troops in the middle of the night, when even water and electricity was turned off. You heard John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesperson, there trying to defend that the American vacation of the Bagram Airbase, which they have held from 2001. You go back in history, of course, the Soviets also had key offensive and defensive capabilities from the Bagram Airbase. Harsh Behare asks, is this a new strategy by the Taliban to cut off possible supply from the Central Asian republics to the warlords in the north? And that is precisely something that I wanted to discuss with Bilal Sarwary, because it clearly seems to be that what everyone thought was that the Taliban would make their advances, military offensive advances, from the south, from Kandahar, where the movement was in fact born. These are pictures you're seeing that the Taliban have released of their training camps. But since many of the districts that have fallen since May have been in the northern part or the northwest, the northeast now with Badghis in Afghanistan, it is clearly thought to be a Taliban strategy to occupy areas where there are other minorities in Afghanistan, including Tajiks, Uzbeks, and Hazaras, who have traditionally been seen as opposing the Pashtun Taliban movement, though the Taliban also has ethnic leaders from these minority communities, including Tajiks and Uzbeks. The deputy military commission head is Tajik. He was apparently one of those responsible for the major movements that the Taliban has done in the Badakhshan region, opposing these. In fact, if I try and explain it to you, are areas where traditionally, even pre-2001, because of the ethnic minorities, the Tajiks, the Uzbeks, the Hazaras, who dominate those areas and who have been opposing the Taliban movement, and as Harsh points out, some of the warlords, as they're called, including Marshal now, Dostum, Uzbek, who is in Turkey because of poor health, but others including Atanur in Balkh, in Herat, you have Ismail Khan. All these leaders have their militias who have been armed. So there is not just the central forces from the Afghan National and Security Defense Forces, but the worry is that Afghanistan could descend into civil war, possibly because precisely of these various ethnic groups and non-unity, if you can call it that, between the Afghan political elite. Even though today itself, President Ghani met former President Hamid Karzai, as attempts continue to grow to keep a unified front in the face of the Taliban advances and offensives. If you remember what happened when President Ghani went to Washington, D.C., that was also where the High Council for National Reconciliation chairperson, Abdullah, an ethnic Tajik from Panjshir, was also invited. These are pictures you're seeing from the White House when both were invited to meet President Biden. But the Americans clearly in the mood to give in to any pressure that comes in from the Afghans. I'm not even sure how much pressure they can, in fact, put on the Americans. The withdrawal is, as we said, CENTCOM says 90% through, and the talks in Doha are going nowhere. The Taliban, as we said, led by Stanikzai, is currently in Iran. A delegation of that meeting Afghan both central leader representatives, including the former Speaker Kanuni. Top of the agenda during the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar's visit to Tehran, where he's making a stopover on his way to Moscow. He's already met Jawad Zarif. He's reportedly carrying a message from the Prime Minister for the new Iranian President-elect Riasi as well. Will be Afghanistan. The Iranians, the Russians, even the Chinese are worried about the security situation post the withdrawal in terms of international terrorist organizations with the Taliban, which the Taliban have in the Doha Accord, at least which they signed with the Americans, tried to, one of the conditions was that they would give up any contacts with international terrorist groups like the Al-Qaeda or the ETIM. There's also the prevalence of Daesh or the Islamic State in Khorasan province, which has been hit, of course, by American airstrikes. And there was a huge group of both Daesh fighters and family members, including Indian women who we'd done a documentary on, who had surrendered to the Afghan forces way back in 2019. Some of them, including the Indians, some from Maldives, Pakistan, and other Central Asian republics, still held in Kabul prisons. So it seems like we're not being able to get through to Bilal Sarwary. So I'm going to end this broadcast here, unfortunately, with the apology that we couldn't get our guest online. We'll try and do that again sometime soon. Thanks for your patience, and apologies again for not getting this broadcast with Bilal Sarwary from Kabul, but you can understand the network is an issue. You have been watching the Gist on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh.